Good afternoon, Facebook. Time for another video about the election. We've got 1 week to go. This time next week, the polls will be about an hour and 20 minutes away from being closed in the eastern states. Still a bit more, an extra 3 hours for the western part of the country. We'll know, not much longer after that. Well, we should know at least who will be running the country. Look, I wanted to talk about the Labor lies today, and there's plenty of them. I'm not sure that Labor actually ever tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help them guide. G'day Jenny and Michael, it's good to see you both. Evan, thank you for everyone joining in. I was looking at some of their costings. I was watching something about it this afternoon about the Labor costings that they released yesterday. And they've spent the entire campaign, and for that matter, the last 2 years, talking about how that the Liberal Party are all for the big end of town, and they're cutting costs, in hospitals and schools to give tax breaks to, the big end of town, meaning multinationals and things like that. Interestingly enough, that when you look at their costings that they released yesterday, they're only actually going to increase tax from that big end of town by about $6 billion. Now you might say, oh, $6 billion is a lot of money, and to you and me it most definitely is, but in the context of $387 billion in extra taxes, which is about how much extra tax they're going to end up slugging to the country, $6 billion doesn't really take up that much of that amount. When you consider it's not much less than what the current government or current tax for petrol is. There's about $7 billion a year at the moment collected from petrol tax. It's not a massive tax hike for the big end of town, but there's still $387 billion of tax. So there's a couple of things that I think are Labor lies here. Firstly, they're for big end of town, you could argue. To say that they're going to tax the big end of town to pay for hospitals and schools, not going to buy a lot of hospitals or schools with the $6 billion that they're going to collect. More importantly, there's still $381 billion in new taxes. And if they're not getting that from the new big end of town, the big companies, the multinationals, who they say are the ones who can most afford it, where is that money coming from? I think you have to ask yourself this election period, just how much less money you're going to have in your hip pocket if Labor wins government and is able to do what they want to do. The truth of the matter is that the majority of those taxes come from hardworking middle-class Australians who go to work every day, sacrifice, time with their family to earn good incomes, and they're the people they're most going to affect. You've only got to look at the negative gearing situation. So with negative gearing, they're saying, well, the inference from Labor is, well, the big end of town, the people who have, all these investment houses that they're getting tax-free through negative gearing. And, if you wanted to, understand more about what negative gearing is, just go Google it. It's pretty simple. Basically, it's a write-off, but yeah, go look it up if you're interested. The thing is that there was a study done that will be published, I think, if it hasn't already been, in the next couple of days, where they've worked out that the average person who negatively gears an investment property, they only have one investment property, not multiples, and on average they earn $87,000 a year. Now, in today's world, $87,000 a year is not a huge amount of money. It's certainly not the big end of town. So if they remove do what they want to do with negative gearing, they're going to most affect in a negative way the average income earner, someone who's on $87,000 a year. The average income in Australia is around about, I think it's 60 something. Oh, I'd have to look at this. It's not much less than that, and it's certainly not a huge amount of money these days. So I think we have to really seriously consider what it is that Labor's really saying. Now, also, keep in mind that with those costings that they released yesterday, and they talked about all their spending and things like that, and all their income they're going to get from extra taxes and blah, blah, blah. That $307 billion does not include how much it's going to cost to meet their renewable energy targets, which has conservatively been put at least $125 billion on top of that. Some estimates up to $500 billion. Think about that. Some estimates from people who really know what they're talking about, much more than I do, have said for the Labor Party's policy of 50-50 renewables to be reached by 2030, which is 11 years away, it could cost up to $500 billion, $500 billion, on top of $387 billion they're already going to introduce in new taxes. I don't think you have to be a massive economist to realise that if the Labor Party get in, we're broke. The country goes broke. You and I, we go broke. People will lose jobs. Businesses, okay, David, businesses will lose money. Businesses will close. It's as simple as that. I can't see any other way forward for the country if the Labor Party wins the next election and does the things that they're talking about, except that big businesses move overseas. Hey, Adam, small businesses put people off because they can no longer afford wages. All close or entirely. People will lose jobs. There'll be less spending. There'll be a downturn. There'll be increased spending by the government, increased tax revenue by the government, less people with less jobs, which means less people spending less money. It's a disaster. It'll be an absolute disaster. My only hope is if Labor do win, that we, we can survive 3 years until we can elect a new government, because it really will be as devastating as that. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Excuse me. I need a drink of water. I will talk to you tomorrow.